The Himalayas, or Himalaya, is a mountain range in Asia, separating the plains of the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan Plateau. The range has some of the Earth's highest peaks, including the highest, Mount Everest, more than 100 peaks exceeding elevations of 7,200 m above sea level lie in the Himalayas. The Himalayas abut or cross 5 countries: Nepal, China, Pakistan, Bhutan, and India. The sovereignty of the range in the Kashmir region is disputed among India, Pakistan, and China. The Himalayan range is bordered on the northwest by the Karakoram and Hindu Kush ranges, on the north by the Tibetan Plateau, and on the south by the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Some of the world's major rivers, the Indus, the Ganges, and the Tsangpo-Brahmaputra, rise in the vicinity of the Himalayas, and their combined drainage basin is home to some 600 million people. 53 million people live in the Himalayas. The Himalayas have profoundly shaped the cultures of South Asia and Tibet. Many Himalayan peaks are sacred in Hinduism and Buddhism. The summits of several Kangchenjunga, Gangkhar Puensum, Mashapuchir, Nanda Devi, and Kailash in the Tibetan Trans-Himalaya are off-limits to climbers. Lifted by the subduction of the Indian tectonic plate under the Eurasian plate, the Himalayan mountain range runs west-northwest to east-southeast in an arc 2,400 kilometers long. Its western anchor, Nanga Parbat, lies just south of the northernmost bend of the Indus River. Its eastern anchor, Namcha Barwa, lies immediately west of the Great Bend of the Yarlung Tsangpo River. The range varies in width from 350 kilometers in the west to 150 kilometers in the east. The Himalayas consists of 4 parallel mountain ranges from south to north: the Sivalak Hills on the south, the Lower Himalayan Range, the Great Himalayas, which is the highest and central range, and the Tibetan Himalayas on the north. The Karakoram are generally considered separate from the Himalayas. In the middle of the great curve of the Himalayan mountains lie the 8,000 m peaks of Dhaulagiri and Annapurna in Nepal, separated by the Kali Gandaki Gorge. The gorge splits the Himalayas into western and eastern sections. Both ecologically and orthographically, the pass at the head of the Kali Gandaki, the Koralai, is the lowest point on the ridgeline between Everest and K2. To the east of Annapurna are the 8,000 m peaks of Manaslu, and across the border in Tibet, Shishapangma. To the south of these lies Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal and the largest city in the Himalayas. East of the Kathmandu Valley lies the valley of the Boat/Sunkosi River, which rises in Tibet and provides the main overland route between Nepal and China, the Araniko Highway/China National Highway 318. Further east is the Mahalangur Himal with 4 of the world's 6 highest mountains, including the highest, Cho Oyu, Everest, Lhotse, and Makalu. The Khumbu region, popular for trekking, is found here on the southwestern approaches to Everest. The Arun River drains the northern slopes of these mountains, before turning south and flowing to the range to the east of Makalu. In the far east of Nepal, the Himalayas rise to the Kangchenjunga Massif on the border with India, the 3rd highest mountain in the world, the most easterly 8,000 m summit, and the highest point of India. The eastern side of Kangchenjunga is in the Indian state of Sikkim. Formerly an independent kingdom, it lies on the main route from India to Lhasa, Tibet, which passes over the Nathula Pass into Tibet. East of Sikkim lies the ancient Buddhist kingdom of Bhutan. The highest mountain in Bhutan is Gangkhar Puensum, which is also a strong candidate for the highest unclimbed mountain in the world. The Himalayas here are becoming increasingly rugged, with heavily forested steep valleys. The Himalayas continue, turning slightly northeast, through the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh as well as Tibet, before reaching their easterly conclusion in the peak of Namche Barwa, situated in Tibet, inside the Great Bend of the Yarlung Tsangpo River. On the other side of the Tsampa, to the east, are the Kanri Garpal Mountains. The high mountains to the north of the Tsampa, including Jayala Peri, however, are also sometimes included in the Himalayas. Going west from Dhaulagiri, western Nepal is somewhat remote and lacks major high mountains, but is home to Rara Lake, the largest lake in Nepal. The Karnali River rises in Tibet but cuts through the center of the region. Further west, the border with India follows the Sarda River and provides a trade route into China, where on the Tibetan plateau lies the high peak of Gurla Manhata. Just across Lake Manasarovar from this lies the sacred Mount Kailash in the Kailash Ranges, which stands close to the source of the four main rivers of Himalayas and is revered in Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, Sufism, and Bonpo. In Uttarakhand, the Himalayas are regionally divided into the Kumaon and Garhwal Himalayas with the high peaks of Nanda Devi and Kamen. The state is also home to the important pilgrimage destinations of Char Dham, with Gangotri, the source of the holy river Ganges, Yamunotri, the source of the river Yamuna, and the temples at Badrinath and Kedarnath. The Himalayan range is one of the youngest mountain ranges on the planet and consists mostly of uplifted sedimentary and metamorphic rock. According to the modern theory of plate tectonics, its formation is a result of a continental collision or orogeny along the convergent boundary between the Indo-Australian plate and the Eurasian plate. The Arakan-Yoma Highlands in Myanmar and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in the Bay of Bengal were also formed as a result of this collision. During the Upper Cretaceous, about 70 million years ago, the north-moving Indo-Australian plate was moving at about 15 centimeters per year. About 50 million years ago, this fast-moving Indo-Australian plate had completely closed the Tethys Ocean, the existence of which has been determined by sedimentary rocks settled on the ocean floor and the volcanoes that fringed its edges. Since both plates were composed of low-density continental crust, they were thrust-faulted and folded into mountain ranges rather than subducting into the mantle along an oceanic trench. An often cited fact used to illustrate this process is that the summit of Mount Everest is made of unmetamorphosed marine Ordovician limestone with fossil trilobites, crinoids, and ostracods from this ancient ocean. The physical factors determining the climate in any location in the Himalayas include latitude, altitude, and the relative motion of the southwest monsoon. From north to south, the mountains cover more than 8 degrees of latitude, spanning temperate to subtropical zones. The colder air of Central Asia is prevented from blowing down into South Asia by the physical configuration of the Himalayas. This causes the tropical zone to extend farther north in South Asia than anywhere else in the world. The evidence is unmistakable in the Brahmaputra Valley as the warm air from the Bay of Bengal bottlenecks and rushes up past Namcha Barwa, the eastern anchor of the Himalayas, and into southeastern Tibet. As the physical features of mountains are irregular, with broken jagged contours, there can be wide variations in temperature over short distances. Temperature at a location on a mountain depends on the season of the year, the bearing of the sun with respect to the face on which the location lies, and the mass of the mountain, the amount of matter in the mountain. As the temperature is directly proportional to received radiation from the sun, the faces that receive more direct sunlight also have a greater heat buildup. In narrow valleys lying between steep mountain faces, there can be dramatically different weather along their two margins. The side to the north with a mountain above facing south can have an extra month of the growing season. The mass of the mountain also influences the temperature, as it acts as a heat island, in which more heat is absorbed and retained than the surroundings, and therefore influences the heat budget or the amount of heat needed to raise the temperature from the winter minimum to the summer maximum. The immense scale of the Himalayas means that many summits can create their own weather, the temperature fluctuating from one summit to another, from one face to another, and all may be quite different from the weather in nearby plateaus or valleys. A critical influence on the Himalayan climate is the southwest monsoon. This is not so much the rain of the summer months as the wind that carries the rain. Different rates of heating and cooling between the Central Asian continent and the Indian Ocean create large differences in the atmospheric pressure prevailing above each. In the winter, a high-pressure system forms and remains suspended above Central Asia, forcing air to flow in the southerly direction over the Himalayas. But in Central Asia, as there is no substantial source for water to be diffused as vapor, the winter winds blowing across South Asia are dry. In the summer months, the Central Asian plateau heats up more than the ocean waters to its south. As a result, the air above it rises higher and higher, creating a thermal low. Offshore high-pressure systems in the Indian Ocean push the moist summer air inland toward the low-pressure system. When the moist air meets mountains, it rises, and upon subsequent cooling, its moisture condenses and is released as rain, typically heavy rain. The wet summer monsoon winds cause precipitation in India and all along the layered southern slopes of the Himalayas. This forced lifting of air is called the orographic effect. The vast size, huge altitude range, and complex topography of the Himalayas mean they experience a wide range of climates, from humid subtropical in the foothills to cold and dry desert conditions on the Tibetan side of the range. For much of the Himalayas and the areas to the south of the high mountains, the monsoon is the most characteristic feature of the climate and causes most of the precipitation, while the western disturbance brings winter precipitation, especially in the west. Heavy rain arrives on the southwest monsoon in June and persists until September. The monsoon can seriously impact transport and cause major landslides. It restricts tourism. The trekking and mountaineering season is limited to either before the monsoon in April/May or after the monsoon in October/November. In Nepal and Sikkim, there are often considered to be 5 seasons: summer, monsoon, autumn, winter, and spring. The flora and fauna of the Himalayas vary with climate, rainfall, altitude, and soils. The climate ranges from tropical at the base of the mountains to permanent ice and snow at the highest elevations. The amount of yearly rainfall increases from west to east along the southern front of the range. This diversity of altitude, rainfall, and soil conditions, combined with the very high snow line, supports a variety of distinct plant and animal communities. The extremes of high altitude, combined with extreme cold, favor extremophile organisms. At high altitudes, the elusive and previously endangered snow leopard is the main predator. Its prey includes members of the goat family grazing on the alpine pastures and living on the rocky terrain, notably the endemic beryl or Himalayan blue sheep. The Himalayan musk deer is also found at high altitudes. Hunted for its musk, it is now rare and endangered. Other endemic or near-endemic herbivores include the Himalayan tahr, the takin, the Himalayan serow, and the Himalayan goral. The critically endangered Himalayan subspecies of the brown bear is found sporadically across the range, as is the Asian black bear. In the mountainous, mixed deciduous and conifer forests of the eastern Himalayas, red panda feed in the dense understories of bamboo. Lower down, the forests of the foothills are inhabited by several different primates, including the endangered Gee's golden langur and the Kashmir gray langur, with highly restricted ranges in the east and west of the Himalayas, respectively. The unique floral and faunal wealth of the Himalayas is undergoing structural and compositional changes due to climate change. Hydrangea hirta is an example of floral species that can be found in this area. The increase in temperature is shifting various species to higher elevations. The oak forest is being invaded by pine forests in the Garhwal Himalayan region. There are reports of early flowering and fruiting in some tree species, especially rhododendron, apple, and box myrtle. The highest known tree species in the Himalayas is Juniperus tibetica, located at 4900 m in southeastern Tibet. Similar to the mountains, the communities living near the Himalayas are experiencing climate change and its negative impacts significantly more than other parts of the world. Some of the impacts that the communities are facing include erratic rainfall, flooding, rising temperatures, and landslides. These impacts can have extreme negative effects on the villages living in the area, especially as the temperatures rise at higher rates than many other places in the world. There are more than 1.9 million people who are highly vulnerable due to climate change, with an additional 10 million people at risk in Nepal. Nepal is among the top 10 most vulnerable global south countries due to climate change in the world, standing at number 4 as of 2010 according to the Climate Change Risk Atlas. According to NAPA of Nepal, many threats including floods, droughts, and landslides are an imminent threat to the glacial lake area. With this in consideration, climate change policy and framework for LAPA were prepared in 2011, primarily focusing on addressing climatic hazards. The increasing temperatures are also leading to a decrease in territory for local wildlife. This has led to a decrease in prey for at-risk predators such as snow leopards. This has led to a negative relationship between local farmers and the wildlife as snow leopards and other predators attack the farmers' livestock. This livestock consists of yaks, oxen, horses, and goats. Snow leopards have killed about 2.6% of the local livestock per year in response to their decreasing habitat. This has had a major impact on the local economy, leading to the loss of about a quarter of the average annual income of the local farmers. This has led to farmers then killing the snow leopards in retaliation in order to protect their livestock and their livelihoods. There are many cultural and mythological aspects associated with the Himalayas. In Jainism, Mount Ashtapadi of the Himalayan mountain range is a sacred place where the first Jain Tirthankara, Rishabhanatha, attained moksha. It is believed that after Rishabhanatha attained nirvana, his son, Bharata, had constructed 3 stupas and 24 shrines of the 24 Tirthankaras with their idols studded with precious stones over there and named it Sinishta. For the Hindus, the Himalayas are personified as Himavad, the king of all mountains and the father of the goddess Parvati. The Himalayas are also considered to be the father of the goddess Ganga. 2 of the most sacred places of pilgrimage for the Hindus are the temple complex in Pashupatinath and Muktanath, also known as Shalagrama because of the presence of the sacred black rocks called shalagrams. The Buddhists also lay a great deal of importance on the Himalayas. Paro Taksang is the holy place where Buddhism started in Bhutan. The Muktanath is also a place of pilgrimage for the Tibetan Buddhists. They believe that the trees in the poplar grove came from the walking sticks of 84 ancient Indian Buddhist magicians or Mahasiddhas. They consider the salagrams to be representatives of the Tibetan serpent deity known as Gaur Jagpa. Himalayan people's diversity shows in many different ways. It shows through their architecture, their languages and dialects, their beliefs and rituals, as well as their clothing. The shapes and materials of the people's homes reflect their practical needs and beliefs. Another example of the diversity amongst the Himalayan peoples is that hand-woven textiles display colors and patterns unique to their ethnic backgrounds. Finally, some people place great importance on jewelry. The Rayan Limbu women wear big gold earrings and nose rings to show their wealth through their jewelry. Several places in the Himalayas are of religious significance in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. A notable example of a religious site is Parotak Sangh, where Padmasambhava is said to have founded Buddhism in Bhutan.